first gunshot cracked the night open like thunder tearing through glass. Guests screamed, crystal goblets shattered. The tall iron gates of Senator Marcus Cole's mansion burst inward as black-clad men flooded the courtyard, rifles raised, eyes cold. In the middle of the chaos stood Aaliyah Cole, the billionaire's only daughter, 24 years old, caramel-skinned, elegant in a flowing ivory gown, her long braids pulled neatly behind her shoulders. She froze as a red laser dot landed on her chest. Before anyone could move, a filthy hand grabbed her waist and yanked her backward. The crowd gasped in horror. It was him. The madman. The same rough-looking man with brown skin, tangled beard, and torn clothes who had sat for months at the front gate of the mansion, mumbling to himself, begging for food, laughing at nothing. The one everyone mocked. The one security had wanted gone. Now he dragged the billionaire's beautiful heiress across the marble floor as bullets tore through the air. "Let her go," someone shouted. Aaliyah screamed once, then the madman spun, his eyes suddenly sharp, alert, nothing like madness at all. With one swift movement, he pulled her behind a stone pillar just as bullets shattered the spot where her head had been seconds before. Then he spoke, his voice was calm, controlled. "Stay down if you want to live." Aaliyah stared at him, heart pounding, as the truth hit her all at once. This man was not mad. And he had been protecting her all along. Just as another explosion rocked the mansion gates, the screen of events cut sharply to black. How did a homeless madman become the last line of defense for a billionaire's daughter? Hours earlier, the sun had dipped low behind the palm trees lining the Cole estate, bathing the mansion in gold. The estate sat on the outskirts of a wealthy gated community, high walls, armed guards, cameras everywhere. It was the kind of place danger was supposed to stay far away from. Aaliyah Cole stepped out of her father's mansion that evening holding a covered plate of food. She wore a simple cream blouse and fitted trousers, her elegance effortless. Despite growing up with wealth, she carried herself with a softness that surprised people. At the front gate, slumped against the iron bars, sat the madman. He was always there. Security called him Gate Ghost. Neighbors whispered he was cursed. Some said he wandered in from nowhere one day and never left. His clothes were always the same: dirty brown jacket, ripped jeans, worn-out boots. His beard was thick and wild. His eyes often looked unfocused, like he was lost in another world. Most days he talked to himself. Other days he laughed at nothing. That evening he sat unusually still. Aaliyah approached slowly, ignoring the nervous looks from the guards. "You don't have to come this close, miss," one of them warned. "He's unpredictable." Aaliyah shook her head gently. "He's hungry." She knelt a few feet away and placed the plate on the ground. "I brought you jollof rice and chicken," she said softly, "and water." The madman lifted his head. For a split second his eyes met hers, clear, focused, intense. Then he blinked and the madness returned. "Food for the queen," he muttered. "The birds warned me." Aaliyah smiled, though something about his words made her pause. "Eat while it's warm," she said, standing. As she turned to leave, his voice followed her, low, almost serious. "They're watching." She stopped. "Who?" she asked, glancing back. But the madman was already eating, mumbling again, his words lost in nonsense. That night Aaliyah couldn't sleep. Her father, Senator Marcus Cole, was a powerful man, wealthy, respected, feared in political circles. He had enemies, everyone knew that, but the estate had the best private security money could buy. Still, unease settled in her chest. She stood by her bedroom window, staring down at the front gate. The madman sat there unmoving, like a shadow carved into the ground. Unseen by Aaliyah, hidden deep beneath the torn jacket and dirty beard, a small earpiece rested against the man's skin. His real name was Elijah Grant. Age 30. Former Special Operations. Hand-picked years earlier for missions that never made the news. Weeks ago, Elijah had intercepted leaked intelligence while working a quiet private contract. A political rival, desperate and ruthless, had placed a price on Aaliyah Cole's life, not her father's. The order was clear. She was the leverage. The plan was bold: strike when the family felt safest. Elijah had refused the official route: too many leaks, too many bought mouths. So he made himself invisible. A madman at the gate was the last thing anyone would suspect. From his position, Elijah watched everything: delivery trucks changing guard patterns, unfamiliar vehicles slowing too long. Every night he mapped escape routes in his head. Every morning he adjusted his posture, his voice, his madness. And through it all, the one variable he hadn't expected was her. Aaliyah. She never looked at him with fear. Never disgust. She brought him food, spoke to him like he mattered. It made the job harder. Because he was not just protecting an asset anymore. He was protecting a human being. The night of the charity gala arrived, a high-profile event hosted at the mansion, attended by politicians, business moguls, foreign guests. Music floated through the air, lights glittered across the lawn. Elijah sat at his usual spot, rocking slightly, eyes half closed. But beneath the act, his senses were razor-sharp. 3 vehicles passed the gate that didn't belong. 2 signals went dead on the east perimeter. His jaw tightened. Inside the mansion, Aaliyah laughed with guests, unaware that death was moving closer with every second. Elijah whispered into his hidden mic, barely moving his lips. "It's tonight." No response. The channel went silent. That was when the first explosion hit the gates. And everything changed. As masked attackers stormed in and chaos erupted, Elijah broke character. He ran. Straight toward the woman he had sworn silently, secretly to keep alive. And as he dragged Aaliyah to safety under a hail of bullets, one thought burned through his mind. If she survives tonight, the truth will come out. But if she didn't? He didn't finish the thought. The gunfire grew louder. Footsteps closed in. And Elijah realized with cold certainty that this attack was only the beginning. Smoke crawled across the courtyard like a living thing, thick and choking. Sirens wailed in the distance, but they felt far away, almost useless. The attackers moved fast, trained, spreading out with deadly purpose. Elijah pressed Aaliyah flat against the cold stone floor behind the pillar. His body shielded hers completely. Bullets struck the marble inches away, sending chips of stone flying. "Don't move," he said again, firmer now. Aaliyah's heart hammered so loudly she was sure he could hear it. Her hands trembled, clutching the fabric of his torn jacket. The smell of gunpowder mixed with sweat and smoke filled her nose. You're not crazy," she whispered. Elijah didn't answer. His eyes tracked shadows, angles, movement. He reached inside his jacket and pulled out a compact handgun, clean, black, nothing like the filthy man everyone thought he was. Aaliyah sucked in a sharp breath. Before she could say another word, a man rounded the pillar, rifle raised. Elijah moved first. One precise shot. The attacker dropped. Aaliyah gasped, covering her mouth to keep from screaming. "Can you run?" Elijah asked, already scanning for the next threat. I think so," she stammered. "Good, when I say go, you run straight to the west wing, don't look back." "What about you?" He glanced at her, then really looked at her, and for just a second, something human flickered across his face. "I'll be right behind you." Another explosion shook the courtyard. Flames licked the edge of the lawn. Guests were scattering, some injured, some frozen in shock. Security guards fired back, but it was clear this attack had been planned down to the second. "Elijah," a voice crackled faintly in his ear. Relief flashed through his eyes. "Control, where have you been?" he muttered. "Comms were jammed, we're rerouting local authorities, you need to extract the asset now." Elijah clenched his jaw. "She's not an asset." Aaliyah heard that. Before she could ask what it meant, Elijah squeezed her hand once. "Now go." They ran. Aaliyah's dress caught on debris as they sprinted through the smoke-filled corridor toward the west wing. Glass crunched under their feet. Somewhere nearby, someone screamed in pain. As they reached the hallway, a guard stumbled toward them, bleeding from his arm. "Miss Cole," the guard gasped, "your father." Another gunshot cut him off. Elijah shoved Aaliyah into a side room and slammed the door shut just as bullets tore through the hallway. They were trapped. The room was dark, filled with old furniture and stacked crates and unused storage space. Aaliyah backed into the wall, chest heaving, eyes wide with fear and confusion. Elijah locked the door and pressed his ear against it, listening. Footsteps passed. Voices whispered. Then silence. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Aaliyah slid down the wall, tears finally spilling over. "My father is he." I don't know, Elijah said honestly, lowering himself to one knee. But right now, staying alive is the priority. She looked up at him, really seeing him for the first time not as the madman at the gate, but as a strong, focused man with scars in his eyes and blood on his knuckles. You knew this would happen, she said slowly.
Yes,
You've been there all this time.
yes.
Her voice trembled. Why? Elijah hesitated. He had trained for interrogations, for torture, for combat, but not for this. Because someone leaked information, he said carefully. Someone powerful. They wanted you gone to hurt your father. Aaliyah's breath caught. And you. I was hired to stop that. She stared at him, shock giving way to something deeper, betrayal mixed with gratitude. So the madness, the dirt, that was all fake. Every bit of it, he said quietly, except the hunger, that part was real. Her throat tightened as she remembered placing the food on the ground, the way he had looked at her. You could have told us, she whispered. My father could have protected you. Elijah shook his head. Your father's circle is full of ears, too many risks. Another explosion boomed in the distance. Elijah checked his weapon. We can't stay here. He cracked the door open just enough to look out. Clear. They moved again, slipping through service corridors, avoiding open spaces. Outside, the sound of helicopters grew louder. As they reached a side exit, headlights flared suddenly. A black SUV skidded into view. Elijah pulled Aaliyah back just in time as bullets sprayed the doorway. They dove behind a concrete barrier. Stay low, Elijah shouted. He fired back, forcing the attackers to take cover, but there were too many. Aaliyah pressed her back against the wall, shaking. Her mind raced. All this time, danger had been sitting right outside her home, and the only person who had truly seen it was the man everyone ignored. Elijah, she cried, they're coming from the left. He glanced at her surprised. How do you know? I saw the reflection, she said, pointing to a shattered mirror nearby. A small, grim smile touched his lips. Good eye. They moved together now almost instinctively. He covered her, she watched his blind spots. When a path opened, they ran. They reached the perimeter wall just as a helicopter hovered overhead, spotlights sweeping the grounds. Elijah boosted her up. Climb. She hesitated, looking down at him. What if they shoot you? Then I did my job. Don't say that, she snapped, surprising them both. For a brief second their eyes locked. Then he pushed her up. Aaliyah scrambled over the wall and dropped to the other side. Elijah followed seconds later, landing hard but steady. They disappeared into the darkness just as police vehicles flooded the estate. From a distance, Aaliyah watched flames rise from her childhood home. Her life, her sense of safety, burned with it. She turned to Elijah, voice breaking. Everything is different now. Yes, he said, and it's about to get worse. Before she could ask what he meant, his phone buzzed. He read the message once. Then his face hardened. They weren't supposed to hit tonight, he said slowly, which means someone moved the timeline. Aaliyah's blood ran cold. Someone close, he added. And in that moment, she realized the greatest danger might not be the enemies outside the walls, but the ones already inside her family's circle. The safe house was quiet in a way that felt unnatural, like the calm after a storm that hadn't finished yet. It sat on the edge of the city, a modest two-story home hidden between auto shops and abandoned warehouses. No guards at the gate, no flashing lights, nothing that screamed wealth or importance. Exactly the kind of place Elijah trusted. Aaliyah sat on the edge of a worn couch, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. Her once elegant dress was torn and stained with soot. One of her braids had come loose, resting across her cheek. She looked smaller here, younger, less like the untouchable heiress everyone knew. Elijah locked the door, checked the windows, then moved through the house with silent precision. When he finally returned to the living room, he tossed a clean hoodie onto the couch beside her. You should change, he said, blend in. She nodded, accepting the hoodie with shaking hands. As she disappeared into the small bathroom, Elijah leaned against the wall and exhaled for the first time since the attack. His ribs ached, his shoulder burned, but pain meant he was alive. His phone vibrated again. Unknown number. He answered without speaking. You broke protocol, a voice said on the other end, cold and controlled. They moved the hit, Elijah replied. You didn't warn me.
A pause.
That information came late. Someone sold her out, Elijah snapped, and you know it. Another pause, longer this time. All you need to know, the voice finally said, is that the threat isn't over. If anything, it's just begun. The line went dead. Elijah stared at the phone, jaw tight. He had trusted the system once. Tonight had proven that trust could get people killed. Behind him, the bathroom door creaked open. Aaliyah stepped out wearing the oversized hoodie, her gown folded neatly in her arms like a piece of another life. Her eyes were red but dry now. Something inside her had shifted. They're saying my father is alive, she said quietly. The news is calling it an attempted attack on a political figure. Elijah nodded. That's the version they'll sell. And the truth? He hesitated. The truth is they didn't come for him. She swallowed. They came for me.
Yes.
Aaliyah walked to the window, peering through the cracked blinds at the empty street outside. All this time, she said softly, I thought I was protected. Guards, cameras, money, power. She turned to face him, but the only person who actually stood between me and death was a man everyone called mad. Elijah looked away. You could have ignored me, she continued. You could have taken the job and never cared whether I lived or died, but you stayed, you watched, you warned me. She stepped closer. Why? Elijah met her gaze then, his voice low. Because once you sit at a gate long enough, you stop seeing a billionaire, you start seeing a human being. Silence stretched between them. Aaliyah's phone buzzed in her hand, a message from a family group chat. We need to talk, urgently. Her stomach tightened. They want me back, she said. They're saying it's safe now. Elijah shook his head immediately. It's not. But if I disappear, she argued, it will look like guilt or fear or worse. He studied her carefully. You're thinking like a politician already. My father raised me that way, she said. He always said power isn't just money, it's presence. Elijah paced the room once, then stopped. If you go back, you won't be surrounded by enemies with guns, you'll be surrounded by enemies with smiles. Aaliyah's grip tightened on her phone. Then I need to know who I can trust. That's the problem, Elijah said. Right now you can't trust anyone. Her eyes flicked to him, except you. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Before he could respond, headlights swept across the front of the house. Both of them froze. Elijah moved instantly, pulling her away from the window and into the shadow of the hallway. He peered through a side slit in the blinds. A single black sedan idled across the street. Engine running. No markings. No one should know we're here, Aaliyah whispered. Which means someone followed us, Elijah replied. The car door opened. A figure stepped out, phone pressed to their ear. Elijah's eyes narrowed. That's not an attacker, he murmured, that's a watcher. The phone in Aaliyah's hand buzzed again. A private message this time. You shouldn't have run, come home, we only want to protect you. No name. No number. Just the words. Her breath caught, they know. Elijah made a decision. You're not going back tonight, he said firmly, and tomorrow you stop being the beautiful, visible heiress everyone knows. She looked at him, fear and resolve mixing in her eyes. Then who do I become? He held her gaze, someone they can't predict. Outside, the car slowly pulled away, disappearing into the night. But the message was clear. The hunt was far from over. And the line between protector and protected was beginning to blur. Morning arrived quietly, almost cruel in how normal it felt. Sunlight slipped through the thin curtains of the safe house, casting soft lines across the living room floor. For a moment, Aaliyah forgot everything, the gunfire, the smoke, the way death had chased her through her own home. Then she heard Elijah moving. She sat up slowly on the couch where she had slept, still wrapped in the oversized hoodie. Her body ached but her mind was sharp, too sharp. Elijah stood at the small kitchen counter, pouring coffee into chipped mugs. He looked different in daylight. Cleaner, calmer, still rough around the edges, but the madness was gone completely now. You didn't sleep, she said. He glanced at her, neither did you. She accepted the mug he handed her. What happens now? Elijah leaned against the counter, eyes thoughtful. Now we figure out who wants you dead and why they're in such a hurry. My father has enemies, Aaliyah said, political rivals, business competitors. Yes, Elijah replied, but most of them want him weakened, not you erased. She frowned, what's the difference? Leverage, he said, your leverage while alive, dead you're a message. That settled heavily in her chest. Aaliyah stood and walked to the window again, careful this time. The street looked harmless, kids riding bikes, a woman opening her shop, a man washing his car. How long have you been watching me? She asked quietly. Elijah didn't answer right away, 3 months. Her breath caught, that long.
Yes.
And in all that time, she said, turning toward him, you never slipped, never broke character. I couldn't afford to. She studied his face, did it ever bother you, pretending to be less than human? Elijah's jaw tightened, people show you who they really are when they think you don't matter. Aaliyah thought of the guards who ignored him, the guests who laughed, the neighbors who complained. And me, she asked, what did I show you? He met her eyes, that kindness doesn't need an audience. The silence that followed felt charged, uncomfortable in a way neither of them wanted to name. A sharp knock at the door cut through it. Both of them froze. Elijah moved first, drawing his weapon silently, signaling Aaliyah back. Another knock, firmer this time. Delivery, a voice called, wrong address, I think. Elijah crept closer to the door, listening for movement, breath, intention. There's no package scheduled, Aaliyah whispered. I know. The handle rattled slightly. Elijah stepped back, eyes scanning the room, no back exit, windows barred. Then his phone buzzed. A text message lit the screen. Relax, it's me. Another message followed instantly. Open the door before the neighbors get curious. Elijah frowned, then lowered his weapon just a little. He unlocked the door. A young woman stood outside, mid-20s, hair pulled into a neat bun, dressed in jeans and a plain jacket. She held a small box under one arm. Morning, she said, you're hard to find. Aaliyah stared, who is she? The woman stepped inside without waiting for permission. Name, Naomi, I work with Elijah, or I used to. Elijah shut the door slowly, you weren't supposed to come in person. Naomi smirked, plans change. Aaliyah crossed her arms, is everyone in your world this vague? Naomi glanced at her, you must be the reason he broke protocol. Elijah shot her a warning look. Naomi raised her hands, relax, I'm on your side. Then explain, Aaliyah said firmly. Naomi sighed and placed the box on the table. There's a leak inside your father's inner circle, not just political staff, family advisors, security heads, someone close. Aaliyah's stomach dropped, do you know who? We have a short list, Naomi said, but here's the part you won't like. She opened the box and slid a tablet across the table. On the screen was surveillance footage from inside the Cole mansion. Timestamp from the night of the attack. Aaliyah leaned in, breath shallow. The video showed the east security gate. Then a familiar face stepped into frame. A man Aaliyah trusted. Someone who had hugged her earlier that evening. Her uncle. Her father's closest advisor. Her hand flew to her mouth. No, that's not possible. Elijah watched her carefully. It is. Naomi nodded. He disabled the sensors manually, knew the timing, knew where you'd be standing during the gala. Aaliyah's legs gave out, she sank into a chair. He helped raise me, she whispered, he calls me his daughter. Naomi's voice softened, that's how they get close. Tears slid down Aaliyah's cheeks, but she wiped them away quickly. Why? Money, Naomi said, power and fear. Your father blocked a deal that would have made certain people very rich. Aaliyah looked up, eyes hardening, so what now? Elijah stepped forward, now we make them think their plan worked. Naomi arched an eyebrow, you're suggesting we disappear her. Yes, Elijah said publicly. Aaliyah blinked, you want the world to think I'm dead. Not dead, Elijah corrected, unreachable, shaken, hidden. And while they relax, Naomi added, we gather proof, enough to bring everyone down. Aaliyah stood slowly, her posture straighter than before. I won't hide forever, she said, this is my family, my name, my life. Elijah met her gaze, I wouldn't expect you to. She took a deep breath, then we do this together. Naomi smiled faintly, you're tougher than you look. Aaliyah allowed herself a small, sad smile. I learned from watching people underestimate me. Elijah nodded once, then it settled. Outside, a news alert began to spread, reports of heightened security, investigations, whispers of internal betrayal. Inside the quiet safe house, a new plan was forming. The madman at the gate was gone. The heiress was no longer just a target. And the people who thought they controlled the game had no idea what was coming next. By midday, the world believed a lie. News channels replayed the same footage on loop, blurred images of the burning mansion, panicked guests, flashing police lights. Headlines screamed about a targeted political attack and heightened threats to the Cole family. Reporters spoke in careful tones, saying Aaliyah Cole was safe but undisclosed. That single word, undisclosed, was doing heavy work. Inside the safe house, Aaliyah sat at the small dining table, scrolling through her phone. Messages poured in from friends, business partners, distant relatives, people who had never checked on her before. "Are you okay? We're praying for you. Call me as soon as you can." She didn't reply to any of them. Elijah watched her quietly from across the room. He had changed again, this time into plain jeans and a dark jacket, clean, unremarkable, the kind of man no one remembered 5 minutes after passing him on the street. "You can't answer those," he said gently. "I know," she replied, locking the screen. "It just feels strange being erased." Naomi stood near the kitchen counter, tapping rapidly on her laptop. "Erased is temporary, controlled silence is power." Aaliyah exhaled slowly. "My whole life people watched me, cameras, interviews, charity events, now I have to pretend I don't exist." Elijah stepped closer. "This won't last forever." She looked at him. "You promise?" He hesitated, just enough for her to notice. "I promise I'll do everything I can," he said instead. Naomi cleared her throat. "We need to move, this place is already warm." Aaliyah's eyes widened. "Already?" "Yes," Naomi replied. "Your uncle's people are efficient, they'll be checking hospitals, hotels, airports, anywhere you might run." Aaliyah stood. "Where do we go?" Naomi glanced at Elijah. "That depends on how far you're willing to step away from who you used to be." An hour later, Aaliyah stared at her reflection in a cracked mirror inside a small roadside motel bathroom. Her braids were gone. In their place was a simple, shoulder-length natural style pulled back loosely. She wore jeans, sneakers, and a plain hoodie, no jewelry, no makeup. The woman's staring back looked normal. Almost invisible. She touched her face, unsure how to feel. When she stepped outside, Elijah looked up and froze for half a second. "You look different," he said. She gave a small, nervous laugh. "Is that good or bad?" "It's perfect," Naomi answered before Elijah could speak. "No one's looking for this version of you." They piled into an old sedan Naomi had borrowed under a false name. As they drove, the city gave way to quieter roads, then open stretches of land dotted with small towns and roadside diners. Hours passed in silence. Aaliyah watched the scenery roll by, her thoughts heavy. "Do you ever get tired of running?" she asked Elijah quietly. He kept his eyes on the road. "Running is easy, it's stopping that gets people killed." She considered that, and pretending. He glanced at her briefly. "Pretending is survival." The car pulled into a small coastal town just before sunset. Fishing boats bobbed in the harbor. The air smelled of salt and fried food. It felt far removed from politics, power, and danger. Naomi parked near a modest guest house. "This is as low profile as it gets," she said. "You'll stay here under a different name." "What name?" Aaliyah asked. Naomi smirked. "Avery." Aaliyah repeated it softly. "Avery." That night, as Naomi left to follow leads and Elijah checked the perimeter, Aaliyah sat alone on the edge of the bed. The room was small but clean. The sound of waves drifted in through the open window. For the first time since the attack, she cried. Not loudly, just quietly into her hands. Everything she had known, her home, her family, her certainty, felt far away now, replaced by questions she wasn't sure she wanted answers to. A soft knock came at the door. "It's me," Elijah said from the other side. She wiped her face quickly. "You can come in." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Naomi, gone for the night, I'll be outside." Aaliyah nodded, then without looking at him she asked, "Did you ever think about leaving?" Elijah leaned against the wall. "Every day." "Then why didn't you?" He was quiet for a long moment. because walking away would have been easier than living with the consequences. She finally looked up at him, and protecting me. His gaze softened. That stopped being a job a long time ago. The words settled between them, unspoken feelings pressing against the silence. Suddenly Elijah's phone buzzed. He checked it once, and his expression changed instantly. "What is it?" Aaliyah asked, her voice tight. "They've made a move," he said. "Your uncle just called for a private family meeting." Her heart skipped. "About me?" "Yes," Elijah replied, "and about your father stepping down." Aaliyah stood slowly. "So they're not waiting anymore?" "No," Elijah said, "they're accelerating." She squared her shoulders. "Then so are we." Outside, the town slept peacefully, unaware that a quiet guest house now held the center of a dangerous game. And somewhere far away, the man who had ordered her death was already planning his next step, confident that the heiress was finally out of the way. He had no idea how wrong he was. The family meeting was scheduled for noon. That alone told Aaliyah everything she needed to know. Her uncle hated rushing anything. He believed power worked best when it moved slowly, carefully, giving people time to accept decisions they never agreed to. Calling an urgent meeting meant panic or opportunity. Or both. Elijah sat across from Aaliyah in the small guest house dining area, a folded newspaper between them. He hadn't touched his food. "Naomi says the meeting is being framed as a unity discussion," he said. "That's usually code for consolidation." Aaliyah nodded. "He'll paint himself as the calm voice in a crisis." "Yes, and your father as a liability." Her jaw tightened. "My father built everything he has. He survived threats before." "This time is different," Elijah replied. "This time they used you." The words stung because they were true. Aaliyah stood and began packing the room. "If I stay hidden, he wins. He controls the narrative. He becomes the protector of the family. And if you show up," Elijah said calmly, "you become the target again." She stopped packing and faced him. "So what do you suggest?" He studied her for a moment. "We let them think you're still broken." She frowned. "Broken?" "Traumatized, unstable, afraid," he said, "someone who wouldn't dare challenge anyone." Aaliyah gave a bitter smile. "They already see me that way." "Exactly," Elijah replied. "We use their assumptions against them." Naomi returned just after noon, her face serious. She dropped her bag on the table and pulled out a small recording device. "I got access to the building," she said. "Maintenance level, audio only." Aaliyah's eyes widened. "You can hear the meeting." Naomi nodded. "Every word." They gathered around the device as Naomi activated it. At first, the voices were polite, measured. Condolences were offered. Statements about safety, responsibility, and public image floated through the room. Then her uncle spoke. "It's time we face reality," his voice said smoothly. "Marcus's judgment has become emotional. The attack proves that his decisions are putting the entire family at risk." Aaliyah's hands curled into fists. Another voice chimed in. "What about Aaliyah?" A brief pause. "We all love her," her uncle replied. "But after such trauma, she needs rest, privacy. This is not the moment for her to be in the spotlight." Elijah watched Aaliyah closely. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned. "So," Naomi muttered, "he's pushing her out without saying it directly." Then came the words that made Aaliyah's breath catch. "For the good of the family," her uncle continued, "I propose temporary guardianship of Aaliyah's assets until she recovers." The room went silent. Aaliyah felt like the air had been knocked from her chest. "He's stealing from me." "Legally," Naomi said, "if he gets the signatures." Elijah's jaw tightened. "And once he controls your assets, you lose leverage." Aaliyah straightened slowly. "No." Both of them turned to her. "No," she repeated, "I'm done letting them decide who I am." Elijah stood. "Aaliyah. I know the risks," she said firmly, "but I also know this: he thinks I'm scared, he thinks I'm weak, and he thinks I'm alone." She looked directly at Elijah. "He's wrong." Naomi studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "If you do this, you can't go in as the heiress." Aaliyah tilted her head. "Then who do I go in as?" Naomi smiled faintly. "As the survivor." That evening the news changed its tone. A brief statement was released, carefully worded, calm, composed. "Aaliyah Cole is recovering well and will address the public soon." Elijah watched the broadcast from the guesthouse television. That'll unsettle them. Aaliyah stood beside him, arms crossed. Good. Later that night, as the town settled into quiet, Elijah walked Aaliyah down to the shoreline. Waves rolled in steadily, endless and patient. Are you afraid? He asked. She thought about it. Yes, but not of them. Of what then? Of becoming the person they want me to be, she said. Silent, managed, controlled. Elijah nodded slowly. You won't. She turned to him. Promise me something. Anything. When this is over, she said, don't disappear. He hesitated. I mean it, she added. You've been protecting me from the shadows, but I want to see who you are in the light. His voice was low. That might be harder than facing your enemies. She gave a small smile. Then we'll face it together. In the distance, a phone rang. Naomi. She answered quickly, listened, then turned back to them. They took the bait, she said. Your uncle just scheduled a press conference. Aaliyah exhaled slowly. Then it's time. Elijah looked out at the dark water, his instincts screaming that the calm was ending. The madman at the gate had stepped into the open. And the people who thought they had won were about to realize something too late. The heiress was no longer running. The press conference was scheduled for 9 a.m. By 8:30, the building was already surrounded. News vans lined the street, reporters adjusted microphones, cameramen tested angles, hungry for drama. Inside the glass-walled conference hall, seats filled with politicians, donors, and advisors who smiled too easily and whispered too often. Aaliyah watched it all from a black SUV parked 2 streets away. Her hands rested calmly on her lap, but inside her heart beat steady and loud. She wore a simple navy suit, clean and sharp, no diamonds, no designer labels, just quiet authority. Her natural hair was neatly styled, framing her face with confidence rather than softness. She no longer looked like the sheltered heiress. She looked like someone who had survived. Elijah sat in the driver's seat, eyes scanning reflections in windows, movements in crowds. Once we step out, he said, there's no pulling this back. Aaliyah nodded. I know. Naomi's voice came through the earpiece. Security sweep complete, no visible threats, but I don't like how calm this is. Elijah's jaw tightened. Neither do I. Across town, inside the conference hall, Aaliyah's uncle stood behind the podium, hands folded, expression solemn. We are gathered today, he began, to address recent events and to reassure the public that the Cole family remains strong and united. Aaliyah watched him on a small tablet screen. His voice was steady, convincing. He's good, she murmured. He's practiced, Elijah replied. Inside the hall, her uncle continued. My brother, Senator Marcus Cole, is recovering. However, after much consideration, we believe it is in everyone's best interest for me to temporarily oversee certain responsibilities. Murmurs rippled through the room. And my niece, he added gently, Aaliyah is safe but deeply traumatized. She has asked for privacy and time away from public life. Aaliyah smiled faintly. Lie number 3. Elijah glanced at her. You ready? She inhaled once, slowly, then nodded.
Yes.
They stepped out of the SUV. At first no one noticed. Then a photographer froze mid-step. A reporter gasped. Within seconds chaos erupted. Aaliyah Cole is here. Cameras swung, microphones surged forward, security scrambled, suddenly unsure who they were meant to protect. Inside the hall the door swung open. Aaliyah walked in. The room fell silent. Her uncle turned slowly, the color draining from his face. For a brief moment the mask slipped, fear flashed in his eyes before he forced a smile. Aaliyah, he said, stepping forward, you shouldn't be here. She met his gaze calmly. You shouldn't be speaking for me. Gasps filled the room. Reporters leaned forward, senses sharpening. I asked for privacy, Aaliyah continued evenly, not erasure, and I certainly didn't give anyone permission to manage my life or my assets. Her uncle chuckled nervously. You're confused, you've been through a lot. I have, she agreed, including an assassination attempt. The room erupted. Elijah, Naomi's voice crackled urgently, movement on the east side, possible extraction team. Elijah stepped closer to Aaliyah, positioning himself slightly behind her. Her uncle raised his hands. This is not the place for. Oh, it is, Aaliyah interrupted, because lies don't survive daylight. Naomi's voice cut in again, uploading now. Screens around the hall flickered. Surveillance footage appeared. The East Gate disabled sensors, a familiar figure entering restricted access zones. Aaliyah's uncle. The room exploded into shouting. He staggered back. This is fake. Time-stamped, Naomi said through the speakers, verified and cross-checked. Security moved in, uncertain but alert. Aaliyah stepped closer to her uncle, her voice low but clear. You didn't just betray my father, you sold my life. His face twisted. You don't understand what's at stake. I do, she said, and I chose not to become collateral. Suddenly a sharp crack echoed through the hall. Glass shattered. Screams erupted. Elijah and Naomi shouted, gunshot. Elijah reacted instantly, pulling Aaliyah down as chaos consumed the room. A bullet tore through the podium, missing her uncle by inches. Security tackled a man near the back exit. But Elijah's eyes were elsewhere. On the balcony. A second shooter. And this one wasn't aiming at the uncle. He was aiming at Aaliyah. Elijah moved without thinking. He stepped into the open. The gun fired. The impact slammed into Elijah's shoulder, spinning him sideways as he collapsed. Aaliyah screamed. The shooter vanished into the crowd. Elijah hit the floor hard, blood spreading fast. Aaliyah dropped beside him, hands shaking as she pressed against the wound. Stay with me, she whispered, please. Elijah's breathing was shallow, but his eyes stayed on her. You're still standing, he said weakly. She shook her head, tears falling. Don't talk. Security swarmed the hall, sirens wailed again, this time closer. Aaliyah looked up, her face streaked with tears, her voice steady despite the fear. Get him help, she commanded, now. As medics rushed in, cameras captured everything. The truth. The betrayal. And the moment the so-called madman proved he had been willing to die for the heiress. As Elijah was lifted onto a stretcher, his fingers brushed Aaliyah's hand. And for the first time since this nightmare began, she was truly afraid. Not of losing power. Not of enemies. But of losing the man who had protected her when no one else would. The hospital corridor smelled of antiseptic and quiet fear. Aaliyah sat alone on a narrow bench outside the emergency ward, her hands clasped so tightly her fingers ached. Blood, Elijah's blood, had dried along the cuff of her sleeve. She hadn't noticed when it happened. She hadn't cared. Time moved strangely here, too fast, too slow. Inside the operating room, doctors worked in urgent silence. The bullet had missed his heart by inches, but the damage was serious. That was all they had told her. Across the city, the story had exploded. Every screen replayed the footage her uncle exposed, the gunshot, Elijah falling. Social media erupted with questions, outrage, and praise. The narrative had shifted completely. The madman at the gate was now being called a hero. Aaliyah's phone buzzed constantly, but she ignored it until one name appeared on the screen. Marcus Cole. Her father. She answered instantly. Aaliyah, his voice came through, hoarse but alive. I saw everything. Her breath hitched. Daddy. I failed you, he said quietly. I trusted the wrong people. I should have listened when you said something felt off. She closed her eyes, fighting tears. You're alive, that's what matters. There was a pause. They told me what he did, the man who protected you. Her grip tightened on the phone. He's still fighting. Marcus's voice hardened. Then when he wakes up, he won't fight alone again, I promise you that. The call ended just as the operating room doors finally opened. Aaliyah jumped to her feet. The doctor removed his mask, exhaustion clear on his face. He's stable, the bullet passed through cleanly, he was lucky. Aaliyah let out a sob she hadn't realized she was holding back. Her knees nearly gave way, but she steadied herself. Can I see him, she asked. The doctor nodded, briefly. Elijah lay pale against white sheets, monitors humming softly around him. His shoulder was bandaged, his face drawn, but he was breathing. Alive. Aaliyah moved closer, taking his hand carefully. You're stubborn, she whispered, you know that. His eyelids fluttered. Then slowly they opened. You're loud, he murmured weakly. A broken laugh escaped her, tears spilled freely now. You scared me. He looked at her, really looked at her, and something softened in his eyes. That means you stayed. Yes, she said firmly, I stayed. Outside the hospital room, the world continued to change. Her uncle was arrested within hours. Evidence poured in: financial trails, recorded calls, signed orders. The political enemies who had backed the plot scrambled to distance themselves, but it was too late. The truth had momentum. Aaliyah visited Elijah every day. She brought him food the way she always had, only now it was hospital meals instead of plates left at the gate. She talked to him about small things at first: the town by the coast, the waves, the quiet. Then about bigger things: fear, betrayal, choice. One afternoon, Elijah watched her thoughtfully. You know, he said, I was supposed to disappear after this. She stopped short. Was? He nodded. That was the plan. She met his gaze steadily. Plans change. He smiled faintly. They do. Weeks later, Aaliyah stood once again at the front gate of her father's mansion. The damage had been repaired, security was tighter, faces were different. But one thing was the same. She held a plate of food in her hands. Elijah stood beside her now, not as a madman, not as a shadow, but as himself, clean, strong, visible. Funny how this all started here, she said. He nodded. Funny how no one saw what mattered. She turned to him. I did. Across the city, headlines shifted again. Aaliyah Cole takes active role in family foundation. Heiress pushes for transparency and reform. Whistleblowers protected after assassination plot exposed. But the story people talked about the most wasn't the money or the power. It was the kindness. How a young woman had fed a man everyone else ignored. How that man had chosen to protect her with his life. And how the truth, once revealed, refused to stay buried. Aaliyah looked at Elijah, her voice calm and certain. You don't have to protect me from the shadows anymore. He met her eyes. Good. She smiled, because I'd rather walk forward with you. And for the first time, there were no enemies hiding in the dark. Only a future earned through courage, sacrifice, and a simple act of kindness that changed everything.